The following is an Ice on Mars presentation.
Something was wrong with the car. It was obvious as she lifted her foot from the gas pedal. Nothing happened. Nothing slowed down. The Lexus kept flying forward, faster and faster. 55 miles per hour. 58 miles per hour. The engine whirred and spun. She cringed, her heart pounding. The woman slammed her foot onto the brake pedal. Nothing happened. Are these pedals even attached to anything? Her mind exploded with irritation as she grabbed the black emergency brake handle and pulled up. Nothing happened. So begins Jaspierre by Mixi J. Applebottom. This episode on
dread.dialectic. Dread.dialectic.
And welcome everyone to episode 11 of dread.dialectic. This is Michael T. Bradley.
And this is Scix Medics.
And as you heard from the opening, we are going to be talking about Jaspierre by Mixi J. Applebottom, probably the most fun author name that we have had so far. That is for certain. Let's go ahead, and that's one of the good. I'm going to go ahead and give her that.
All right, right off the bat.
So this week, it's me reading the book, so I'm going to go ahead and try to give a basic plot outline, which is a little bit difficult, or maybe I'm terrible at plot outlines. I usually just hand them over to you when we were both reading, and now I'm like, shit, maybe I'm just bad at them. So this book is somewhat of a love triangle or love rhombus between Jaspierre, who is, I guess, a brilliant young woman with, I'm not sure if a sadistic streak is the right way to put it, the lack of knowledge as to anything different than having a sadistic streak, and one of the men who she has captured and is living in a room in her basement, and another man who she knew from her childhood who has an unhealthy crush on Jaspierre. So it's kind of a love triangle between them.
So wait, her captive is part of a love triangle?
Yes, I would say mostly it is the unhealthy love story that develops between her and her captive.
Okay.
I don't know how to go into any more detail than that without it just sounding insane. Trigger warnings, there's some Stockholm Syndrome going on in here, and there's just body mutilation of all sorts, left and right. A rape scene or two, some sexism, some animal violence.
I'm glad it was your turn.
I chose this one because of the really striking cover, I thought, and, well, I'll get into it in a bit, actually.
Sure.
I'll wait for the good. We do the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the good, we talk about what we like. In the bad, we talk about what we don't like, and try to stay as spoiler-free in those sections as possible. In the ugly, we're going to talk about, quote-unquote, the monster at the end of the book, i.e., was it a killer clown? Was it aliens from outer space? Was it yada, 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 yada?
It was racism.
It seems to be racism a lot with the stuff that we read. And we kind of discuss things that are spoilers. So if you don't want the book spoiled, stop once we get to the ugly.
Good advice always, really.
True enough. Before we get into any of that, I want to remind everyone that if you want to give us feedback or suggestions for something to read on further episodes, or if you've written something and you want to suggest that, then please write to us at dread.dialectic@gmail.com. Or feel free to comment on the YouTube channel. I think you can leave feedback on iTunes, like I'm so not an Apple person, and so I don't know.
An Applebottom?
Or you can make the little notes on SoundCloud, like right at the second you want to say something.
Right now.
So there's that. All sorts of exciting places to tell us what you think. Now it is our turn to tell you what we think, and really, more it's my turn, because I read this week. So the good.
Yes.
So as I've said before, and I'm sure I will say again, I think that the worst sin any piece of art can commit is being boring. This book is sure as hell not boring.
Okay. You sound traumatized, but not bored.
That's right. I don't know. I mean, this book was just, like, I don't even think good, bad, and ugly applies in this book, because shit is just thrown at you left and right. And it's like, wait, are you redefining language, or do you not understand it? And what's going on? In Bethesda games, they have come out and said that what seem to be faults in the game, like when your horse climbs up the side of a ship or whatever, it's actually enhancements to the game, because it adds entertainment, even if it's not exactly what they were going for.
Okay.
I think this book exists in that realm. I can't necessarily say it was a good book, but I enjoyed almost every minute of it. There are a few things about the end that I had problems with, but it is part one of either a series or a trilogy. There appear to be 3 and maybe a prologue book out there now, so I'm not sure if they're more planned or if it's a trilogy. But yeah, I think I'm going to just forego good and bad. And I just want to talk to you about
ugly
shit that's in here. So first off, I thought this book was kind of like a mix of Roald Dahl and Thomas Harris.
Okay.
It has that Roald Dahl-esque sort of magical realism, although I wouldn't say Roald Dahl necessarily did that, but just that heightened reality where weird shit can happen and you're kind of like, okay, because I'm in this universe, I'll roll with that.
Right.
And Thomas Harris, because the torturing someone and kind of forcing them to love you aspect, which is kind of the big thing that I remember from Hannibal, and the violence, the wanton violence all over the place. I have different categories, like I did with Raven's Peak, but these are not all bad things. These are just like things I wanted to talk about. So, first category, are these grammar oddities or brilliancies? So throughout the book, the word chance is always capitalized, which I thought was really odd, and I was like, is this some sort of weird Buddhist subtext or something that's going on here? And then, about 3/4 of the way through the book, a character named Chance is introduced, and so apparently, somewhere along the way, somebody did a universal find and replace where chance is chance, which makes all these strange sentences like, just give me a chance. And it's like, wait, I'm supposed to give you a person? What the hell? Also, drew. Whenever, like, he drew on the paper is capital D-R-U.
No.
Weirdly, though, there's no character named Drew in the book.
I bet there was before the final edit.
Or perhaps in one of the sequels? Who knows? Here's a line that someone says, "Do you want me to sex you or not?" And I don't know if this is meant to be some sort of brilliant comment on how deprived of actual human interaction this character has been for 10 years, or if Mixi thought that was like how normal humans speak. It's really up in the air. Who knows?
Maybe the character was offering to tell someone their sex.
Let me just hold up your tail and check. There also these 2 lines very close together. So she trudged them along with her. Then later, she trudged slower and sadder. I don't think Mixi quite gets the word trudged.
No.
There's this line, "Fuck damn it, I forgot to wash up." Which I kind of like. I admit, I kind of like it. But I've never heard another human being say.
She kind of sounds like a Russian trying to do English or something.
Maybe that's why she uses the sobriquet Applebottom, because her real name is like Stalin or whatever, right?
I think it would be Apfel, if she were German, it'd be Apfel Heine.
There you go. You know, and here and there are some periods that aren't in the right place, and yada, yada, yada. I feel like I really kind of did all that to death with Raven's Peak, and so I don't want to go into that, hire a copy editor, whatever. The one really, bad thing that I thought was in here is that at one point, so Lucas, who is Jaspierre's captive and has been for a decade now, she starts letting him roam free around the house and everything more often because she's kind of falling for him and she feels kind of bad, and she can't kill him even though she thinks she should, and it's what her mother would have done, but she's not living up to her mother's expectations.
So this is the family business.
Yeah, kind of. And I'll go into more of that in a minute with the Roald Dahl sort of stuff, I think.
Giant Peach and the witches.
But so in any case, Lucas is outfitted with one of those Battle Royale style exploding collars, except this is an anklet that if he goes off the reservation, it's going to explode. And it's not a real reservation. I just said that word because my brain is not connecting things correctly. But then a little later, part of their plan involves Lucas cross-dressing and pretending to be her to give her an alibi while she does stuff. And so he drives around town pretending to be her, and they forget about the fact that he has the anklet on, and it just doesn't. And I was like, oh, that was like... I know you got quite a few balls juggling, but come on.
Balls.
But so the main thing that I want to talk about is this world that Mixi has created here and the weird Roald Dahlness of it. So I brought up the mother. Here's a quote that I think introduces this bizarreness of the entire world that we're inhabiting here. Jaspierre had been attending board meetings since she was 5. So her mother basically tortures her into becoming this perfect person and this perfect, cold, distant person who uses everything to her advantage. Her mother disappears when she's 8, and when she's 11, finally a teacher realizes that her mother isn't around and gets her sent to the courts. And basically the judge, because she stands up in front of him and is like, look, I've been running my business successfully for 3 years and nobody noticed. Like, you should really just let me keep going, and or else this business is going to fall into the ground and a lot of people will lose their jobs. And so the judge is like, well, as long as you check in with a caretaker every now and then or whatever. And it's like, what? I mean, that seems very children's bookish, right?
Yeah.
Her company, by the way, guess what its name is?
Christian Grey Incorporated.
No, though I like your spirit. It's Killer Incorporated, or Killer and Company, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Because, of course, her last name is Killer.
Of course. That's so subtle.
It is with a Y, alright?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, totally subtle.
Everything in this book is like that. It's like in this weird, kind of a children's book reality, except with gore and rape.
That sentence.
Lucas, her captive, describing him and how he was a hacker. Once, he hacked Facebook and made every post about a Powerball ticket.
Oh.
What does that mean? I don't know. Nobody knows. Talking about Killer and Company, which makes medications, there's this line here which made me think of The Room. A new medication for cancer-suffering patients had recently been approved and sales were through the roof. The notes from her team explained they had even added a few extra deliveries. The medicines were so lucrative. And it's like, this made me think of The Room, that one line where Johnny is like, oh, we have a new client at the bank. And it's like, yeah, alright. This is somebody who's never worked at a bank and knows nothing about business and is like, they have clients, right?
Have you ever seen BoJack Horseman?
A couple of episodes, yeah.
There's a character midway through the first season, Vincent Adult Man. And it's 3 little boys in a trench coat. Almost no one realizes this. And he's like, I'm going to the business office to do business things. And that's what your description makes me think of.
For sure. So this is the world that Jaspierre has grown up in. And I thought it was, like, insane and bizarre. And then there's a point near the end where I was like, oh, I find this kind of charming now.
Oh, no.
Because Jaspierre says to Lucas about murder, you know, it's like speeding. Everybody does it, but you gotta be careful not to get caught. That kind of thing. And Lucas is like, okay. And it's like, oh, alright, Jaspierre just lives in this weird magical world, right? The other problem, though, is that when you're in this sort of magical world, it's got that kind of Twin Peaks double-edged blade to it, right? Because everything can have a dark side.
There's a dark side to murder and rape?
The guy who was in love with her when she was younger, who she, when she was a kid, considered her best friend because he hung around her all the time. I don't know if it's the correct term, date rapes her, and has the line, her breasts turned him into a monster.
Wow.
So he's a Mormon, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it's like there's this dark side to the world, right? And, like, then she, I don't know what it is, 10, 15 years later or whatever, has sex with Lucas, and she's like, oh, hey, this is kind of fun. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, you know, mom said to hate men and yada, yada, yada. And it's just fucking strange. She also has a gizmo that she created that can change the numbers on license plates.
Wow, that's interesting. Are you sure a child didn't write this?
Mixi sends out updates, because I got this on Insta Freebie, like the past couple that I've talked about, and she sends out updates, and she looks like an adult and claims she has children. Maybe she wrote these for her kids.
That's a distressing thought.
Even more just surreal moments. The housekeeper who notices Lucas is hanging out in the house naked, and she's never seen him before because she's not allowed down in the basement where he's been for the past decade. Why were you naked? Are you porking her? Is she your pork pudding? You shouldn't mess around with her. She is trouble. Serious. She threw her hands up again, prattling about. Again, I don't think Mixi knows what prattling means. I have work to do. I can't sit around and chat with you all day. Note, she's not sitting at this point.
Right.
That same housekeeper later on confronts Jaspierre. I have warned you plenty. Jaspierre's rage roared to life, a blade in her hand before she even knew where she got it. She raised it with both hands over her head. That is enough! Marcy ducked out of the way with unexpected skill. She slid one of the many hidden blades out of the nearby plant. Oh, come and get it! So she's just willing to throw down with blades with her employer at any moment.
Her mode of speaking is interesting. Is she an ethnic minority?
Do you mean the character Marcy?
The maid, yeah.
It's never said one way or the other.
Okay. Pork pudding. That's clearly someone trying to make a colorful idiom, who just doesn't.
The entire book is full of that. Just these things where it's like, ew, 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 no, don't stop, no. Okay, keep going. It's...
Ew, that sounds like my first time.
It sounds like all our first times. Overall, I don't know what the hell to think of this book.
Hi, Mixi, if you ever hear this.
I would love to hear feedback. I would love to hear, what, is this all intentional? Because it seems like it is to me.
So, you mentioned animal cruelty in the warnings. How does that come into the story?
So Jaspierre has, throughout the story, a varying number of serval cats as pets.
Oh, fancy.
10 years ago, she has one serval cat named Rainbow. Rainbow is out crossing the road or playing outside, or I can't remember if maybe her mom lets her out or something happens. I think it's after her mom's gone. Whatever. In any case, Rainbow is out playing around. Lucas is driving, and he hits the cat and kills it. And that is what causes him to be put in the room in the basement where he's kept for the next 10 years. And he feels like he deserves that because the animal was a sweet animal, and he...
So he hits a cat, and he deserves to be imprisoned for 10 years.
He thinks he deserves to die. Lucas is a very innocent, childlike character.
That makes it better.
As evinced by, do you want me to make sex to you? The Rainbow dying gets, really bloody and disturbing. Like, they take the cat inside, and Lucas, for whatever reason, follows inside and is like, hey, I'm really sorry. And Jaspierre opens the cat up and starts pulling out baby kittens because she was pregnant, and her maid at the time is helping her get kittens out of there, and the maid slips and one of the cats falls and it explodes on the floor, and then she murders the maid.
Wow.
And again, Lucas just stands there and is like, she just killed that woman. Why didn't you just leave? This is the time where you're just like, well, hey, good luck with that.
I got a phone number for you. It's only 3 numbers long.
I can't remember if her servals for the main part of the story make it out alive or not. Possibly not, but I don't remember that. At one point, there's a rocket launcher involved, so anything's fair game.
Well, having servals as house pet is a little unusual.
Sure. And I believe illegal, right?
I would think so, but so is killing your maid.
Fair enough. So let's move on to the ugly. I want to talk about the end of the book, because I didn't talk much about the love triangle, because most of it is her and Lucas, and her kind of learning to be human, and Lucas learning how to make her happy, and yada yada yada. And it's tough because he's got some of his toes gone, and so on and so forth.
Sorry. There's just the matter-of-factness of delivery there.
At one point, she gets a new guy, and Lucas fucks something up, and she's like, okay, well, you fucked that up, so you have to hack off all of his toes yourself. And so he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Jasp, and then he goes and does it. And it's like, this is so fucking weird.
It's a strange sort of punishment. Here, you like this stranger.
I think it's because he let him out and he caused some damage or something like that. In any case, I've talked mostly about that, but there is also, so there was the, you know, the kid who raped her at like 11 or whatever. And we get that through a flashback. The book does flashbacks every few chapters and fills some things in. And the flashbacks I thought were actually well-paced and nicely thought out, like how they filled things out. Though it was a little confusing at first. I wasn't quite following it, especially considering the first chapter actually is about chapter 15 or so, because it's like the first chapter is actually a preview of what's going to happen around chapter 15. It's very much like those sort of action-y shows where it starts out with kind of the climax, and then it's like
10 years ago.
Yeah, and then it's like, here's how we got there. Problem is that the first chapter happens, and then at the end of the first chapter, it's like 10 years ago or whatever. And then chapter 2 starts, and I'm like, wait, are we still at 10 years ago, or are we back at where chapter 1 started? And we're at neither. We're at the quote-unquote present time. And so that took a little bit of time to figure out. But except for that first chapter, I think they're mostly well-used and well-placed. But if you look at the timeline, so this kid raped her, and somehow she stopped talking to him. Then in the book, she finds out that he's now a cop in town, and he's like, oh, hey, Jaspierre. And he starts following her and trying to pick up their relationship because he thinks that they're in a relationship. Like, he doesn't realize that there's something wrong with it, right? Like, he thinks that she's just playing hard to get or whatever.
Yeah, good cop.
She has a giant mansion on the edge of town, you know, was made CEO of her own business at, like, age 11.
With her name on it.
How did this guy, who apparently stayed in town because he's a cop at this point, how did he not ever think, maybe I should go visit my girlfriend sometime in that intervening 16 years or what have you? There are so many interesting things about rape culture and the way that women are inculcated to believe that they're ugly for different reasons, or to feel like they have to rip away anything that does make them attractive if they have a traumatic experience like this, that I wish I could talk about, but they're all kind of thrown into the mix with all of the crazier shit. And so it's difficult to kind of pick up on those things and lead any sort of meaningful discussion when you have things like, I'm going to go get the rocket launcher while you dress up in drag and go get fast food.
Well, that was just Tuesday. And you told you weren't going to tell anyone.
I envy your gay lifestyle.
Yeah, it comes with a rocket launcher once you convert your 100th straight guy.
There are, I think, some interesting things being said in this, and I'm not really sure how to bring them up. Maybe someday I will attempt one of the other books in the series, though, I don't know, man. After the end of this one, I'm not sure. I'll go ahead and say it here. The end of it was, it essentially Lucas gets killed. That's the kind of the big thing that happens at the end. And I'm like, you know, the thing that I found the most charming about this book was the Jaspierre-Lucas romance, was the fact that they're both so fucked up mentally, yet they kind of find a place in each other's hearts for each other. And I'm like, if you take that away, am I really going to care about her just kind of being a murderer? I mean, I don't think I would.
Maybe it'll be like certain supernatural romances, and like she'll just fuck a different supernatural being every book, and eventually she'll work her way up to God. And I'm combining Anne Rice and Shirley
Harris,
yes. They should be combined.
You know, maybe next episode, because Lucas is, I would say, pretty much a sub, so maybe next episode it'll be a dom, And then the third part of the trilogy, it'll be a werewolf. Who knows?
I think that's a natural progression.
Got to throw the werewolf in somewhere. But I would say that there is a novel's worth of events in here. You know,
That should be on the cover.
This isn't just like you need a copy editor and you have to figure out where to focus and things like that. This is just, are you doing like literally a kid's book about rape, murder, and animal cruelty? Because if so, I could be sold on this, you know, but it's not quite clear.
As an aside, Roald Dahl did do some very adult novels as well, and if you haven't found them yet, you should look them up. My suspension of disbelief keeps hanging up on the serval cats, which is a ridiculous point. Gosh, Lucas is the one that dies. See, now, hearing everything up to there, I think, what would be a satisfying conclusion? Either they all live happily ever after, which would make me barf, but it would make sense, or the murderer would die, which, you know, is predictable, but would make sense. But killing Lucas off just seems really empty. Is that how it landed?
I kind of suspected it might happen simply because there's so much kind of like, look how gory this is now and then throughout the book. And then I was for sure it was going to happen because Lucas is like, hey, this guy has us trapped here, but I just want you to know that I really love you and I want you to marry me. And I was like...
Yeah, there you go.
And it's within hearing distance of the guy who has them trapped and thinks that she's dating him. And it's like, Lucas, like, I know you're a little soft, but come on. It feels flat. It sort of reminded me of the movie The Doom Generation.
I don't know it.
It is an even more soulless natural-born killers.
Oh, my.
Done by someone who kind of got all of the slick style changes, not as slick as Stone, obviously, but kind of got all the slick style changes and the in-your-face gore and the media saturation and the commentary on the youth and things like that. But I don't think he quite understood that Natural Born Killers was meant to be a satire.
That sounds bleak.
Yeah, and the end of that is the only likable character is murdered pretty horrifically.
Yay.
I'm torn on whether I would say I would recommend this book to others. I would recommend it to people, but I would say, okay, once you're about 10% in, if you're not just, like, hooked, then give it up, you know? It's never gonna, like, get to that point where it's gonna hook you if you aren't in the beginning, like, this is crazy, I love it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so, came away with very mixed feelings on this one. Can't say that I regret having read it, that's for sure.
Would you say that people who enjoy this sort of thing would enjoy it?
A tautological delight.
Yes.
All right. If you have feedback, questions, comments, or submissions, or suggestions, drop us a line at dread.dialectic@gmail.com. All right, coming up next, we're going to have A Density of Souls by
Christopher Rice.
Everybody's damn kid is writing horror these days. Crazy.
Well, if you read much Anne Rice, you know she was bound to have a gay son, and look at that, she did.
Fair enough. For now, this is Michael T. Bradley.
And this is Scix Maddox.
And we are...